Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
You have got to get up pretty early to go do something. We are the Alternative Dig Talk. With our mobile studios, we are redefining TV presentation just as technology is setting the pace. We are blending our approach with fresh, perspectively designed breakfast show, The Mighty Drive, informative and entertainment show, exclusive and live interviews.
We President Museveni wadde juzi namulaba apima akawunga kilo 2 tasobola kalya nini bwaba alya kilo 5 oyannema okuliisa eggwanga ne bwe limundekera.
Njagala kwebaza the Alternative Dig Talk etuwadde kano ka Mighty Drive era n'abatuwuliriza bonna abali ku mikutu njagala basaba mugendo maaso n'okuwuliriza.
All given to you just a click away on your phone, tablet, laptop and smart TVs as we are streaming live on our social media platforms, on the road and on the go. We are the Alternative Dig Talk.
Hey Ugandans, I'm Lieutenant Colonel Dewa Kiki, the Deputy Defense Spokesperson and actually the Deputy Spokesperson for the Uganda People's Defense Forces. I was hosted on Alternative Dig Talk. I encourage all Ugandans that this is the way to go. Always watch, participate, give your views and ask questions on Alternative Dig Talk. Dig Talk, the way to go.
Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
Good morning, all citizens. My name is Tumuhimbise, and we're at Professor Dr. George Wilson Kanyeihamba's home. As it has always been the norm that every last Friday of a month we have him to take us through how the month has been. This time around, because of a few unforeseen issues, we had to have him today, a Wednesday, 5th, so that we can discuss quite a number of issues that are happening in our country and definitely the region and continent and the whole world. Prof, I want to assume that you're fine, but I want the public to hear from the horse's mouth by saying hello to the digital.
Good morning, viewers and others. First of all, I welcome you to my home, which remains very well looked after, thanks to my Dr. Betty and niece Asimwe, who look after me here, and my man about the house, Herbert, who doubles as a gardener, bodyguard, and everything. As I said in one of our previous discussions, I feel very comfortable, well, with peace with God and myself, since I negotiated for me not to have policemen guarding me. Those who guided me, they were of two types. The old ones seemed to be very well qualified. I hadn't had any evidence of their being corrupt. The younger ones, they even nearly killed me. At least two of them assaulted me. They would demand me to pay them, although government was supposed to pay them. And eventually I negotiated. I said I no longer wanted the police to guard me, although I'm entitled to be guarded by them. And since then, so over a year, you haven't seen any policeman here. And I feel very comfortable and even more protected than when I had them, because I was afraid of
It
them.
is something I wanted to ask, that where does it leave your security as retired justice? Because truth be told, perhaps there are so many people that aren't happy with your decisions then as a justice. So where does that leave your security before we go into the depth of the discussion for which we're here?
Well, my neighbor up here is a minister, Ujang, and his residence is guarded by policemen. Opposite me lives the son-in-law of President Museveni, Odrich Wabogo, and his wife, Museveni's daughter. They are got many guards here.
So in other words,
Then behind me, there is an ambassador's house, which is also guarded. And I told you that also my long-time friend, and by the way, I wish him rather quick recovery, the Kabaka of Uganda. He is also part of my security. And I don't want to say details. So really, I'm much more protected than I was when officially there were policemen at my gate. So that is how I am guarded.
Okay, Prof, thanks for the intro, especially towards the alternative dig talk viewers and the might drive, which we termed the might drive special, because we're not driving, we are seated in your home. Want to go quickly into what people had in their minds that we should ask you about, and would want to begin with the Chankwanzi. Have you been in Chankwanzi before when you were serving as minister? And if yes,
I have never been to Chankwanzi myself, but there had been an arrangement that I should go and give lectures to people who used to go to Chankwanzi, though they never materialized.
As a presidential advisor at a time? As a presidential advisor at a time? Or
as presidential advisor, as minister. Because whatever people say, I am regarded here and elsewhere as an expert on constitutional law. And the President Museveni then, together with the Secretary General of the party, who was at that time Amama Babazi, they had arranged that I should always lecture to the new members of parliament. And for the first 10 years, every new parliament, I would be the chief guest even when we had the former, the Speaker of Parliament for Burkina as our chief guest, I still gave the keynote address in front of everybody. And then the last one, I attended to, rather I was not invited to address new members of Parliament as a guest, is the last time that Amama Mbabazi was Prime Minister. He called me and I addressed the meeting of ministers and the new Parliament, and they always enjoyed the exchange between myself and them. And I was asked a question, because I had said that governments all over the world, even political parties, don't always consult the ordinary people, the peasants. They make decisions for us, they implement those decisions, but there is a public relationship where they say that what they have done. I say that even in the election of the president and those who become ministers, ordinary people will play very little role. Then one of the MPs whom I addressed, a new one, asked me a question. And they said, Professor, are you saying that we ordinary people don't participate in decision-making processes of the country? I say that is absolutely true. And I say, and you are an MP now, so you are not an ordinary person. That's why you are here, you have the privilege to ask me a question. The ordinary people only read what we discuss, decide in newspapers. But every 5 years, we go to them to solicit for their votes. We even have to pay them in order to get their votes. But once they have given us their votes, that's the end of the story. So that story, on the question, not on my speech. My speeches, I always give copies to the clerk of Parliament, so I hope they kept them somewhere in the archives. But on that day, President Museveni, and this is public knowledge, so I'm not giving a secret, was in Mbale on government function. He didn't attend that first meeting of MPs. And a reporter asked him, he said, you are minister.
Referring to you?
I was then Minister of Justice, Attorney General. No, I had become a judge. That Judge Kanyeihamba, first of all, is indulging in politics. And yesterday he said that the ordinary people of Uganda, voters, they don't participate in decision making of the country. And this was the following day, I was headline. Then he responded. I don't think he wanted it to be published, but it became headline both in a New Vision and in Monitor, saying Museveni says Kanyeihamba is unfit to be a judge. He should be disciplined. At that time, I was addressing a conference in Mbarara. For me, I had him. Then somebody said, have you read these papers? Headline, Kanyeihamba unfit to be a judge. I looked at it. He thought I would be scared and fear. I laughed. So he said, are you going to save the president trouble and resign from government? I said, no. President Museveni knows what to do if he wants to a judge to leave office, and it is not up to him to say Kanyeihamba go or come, because I'll come to that point before I finish that contribution. So I came back. There was Mzee Gureme. I haven't heard from him. He used to contribute to the newspaper, and he's from Ankole himself. So he said, Museveni is becoming very careless. Supposing they have heard what he has said, and some bad people whom he doesn't know decide to kill Kanyeihamba, which happened in England centuries ago, when somebody annoyed the king, and he said, "Can somebody get rid of this? This is a Lord Bucket." And when the people heard him, they thought he really wanted him to be killed, and they went and murdered him. And the king executed those who murdered his friend, because they didn't know the relationship. As many people think what I'm going to say, that Museveni hates me, but he doesn't. He's on record, and he's in one of my books, saying somebody accused me of being a spy, being in the payment of foreign elements, and then I said, "What evidence do you have?" He said, for example, Kanyeihamba is an agent of the British government. So Museveni said, "Really? You have the evidence?" He said, "Yeah, no." He said, "What evidence do you have?" He said, "His wife is originally British." So Museveni apparently laughed. And then, later on, this man didn't know one of the relatives of Museveni is actually also married to a German. So he called him and said, "Could you go and check whether my relative is also a spy?" So the man, not knowing, said, "Why, sir? Why do you say so and so I should check?" He said, "Because she's also married to a foreigner." And they said, I have also ministers, other ministers. There is Wakapabulo, is married to a Tanzanian. One of the former prime minister who died recently, Paul Etiang, is married to a Swahili from Zanzibar. Please check them for me and see whether they are spies. But in those days, Museveni was very transparent, very honest. I don't know how he called the others, but for me, he called me. He said, "So Kanyeihamba, you're a spy." I said, "What makes you that?" So he laughed. He said, "Somebody says because you are married to an English woman, you are their spy." And he laughed, and it ended there. So what I am saying is that I used to address Parliament. And then, not because of me, but obviously the government decided its own supporters should be addressed differently, be told different stories which I don't know. And the first time I was invited to be among those, the first one to go, because Chankwanzi came when I was already minister. But because of my belief that if you are going to rather to address members of Parliament, you should address them all. Whether they are members of the opposition or not, they are legislators of this country. They have equal rights and equal duty to listen to how they should govern this country. So that is when the NRM began, when they started taking only on their supporters to Chankwanzi, and not the likes of others who were DP, UPC, but still members of Parliament, that I became a bit disillusioned with the way NRM was slowly changing from an all-embracive, broad-based government which we all loved and supported greatly to an authoritarian, intolerant regime. Museveni, that time, through that exchange at Parliament and the write-up in the newspapers, was still saying and behaving like the servant of the people. We supported him because he was humble, but very, very committed to the welfare of the people. I never knew in my lifetime that Museveni would come up and say, I am no servant to anybody. I work for my own program and myself. Those words alone are sufficient in the democracy to challenge a leader. But he has done worse than that. He's going to be sworn in next week as for his, I think, the 7th term. 7th term. He will be, by the time he finishes next term, he will be in his 80s. There are speculations that he has got a success in mind, but he hates discussing the leaders. And he's saying that Ugandans will decide their leaders, which is correct. But as a leader, you are interested and concerned as to whether the person who is going to replace you is good for the people. And therefore, as you are approaching 80, by the way, recently a columnist who has contributed to one of my books called Deka Chionga came up with a writer, and I want to ask him to revise his knowledge. Museveni is not 76. Museveni grew up in Kigezi. He's a Munyakigezi. So many of us Munyakigezi, we know. We know how old he should be. Banyankole know. But because he was young and grew up in Kigezi, it is hearsay. It is Banyakigezi who would know exactly.
And you're one of them.
Yes, but let me tell you, there is a high official in the government. I showed him the book which Museveni has written a foreword to, called The People, Customs, and Culture of the Banyakigezi. In that book, he describes himself as a Banyakigezi. If I am not mistaken, the Banyakigezi, whose constitution I drafted myself, it embraces Banyakigezi all over the world. In that book, he attends as a member. He and the BCJ are Banyakigezi, just as were immediate and present prime ministers, Mbabazi and Rwakana Rugunda, are also Banyakigezi. So I asked that senior man, still in the cabinet today, I said, by the way, have you ever read Banyakigezi's book? If you read it, you'll find that President Museveni is of my ethnic origin. He's a Munyakigezi. He said, I said, would you like to look at the book? I have a copy here. He said, no, I don't want to know. Because for you to admit when you are frightened of the president that he also is a Munyakigezi, you think in your mind that is reasonable. But when it is true, because in that book of Banyakigezi, when our families are there, mine, the Bikangagas, the Mbabazizi, they are describing some prominent Bachiga, Banyarwanda, Baholo. Kigezi is made up of Banyarwanda, Bachiga, Baholo, and Abatwa, Pygmies. Those are the tribes which inhabit Kigezi, and Museveni is one of those. Okay. So, when I told him which is true, the man was scared and frightened. He said, I don't want ever to know in my head that Museveni is that. Because for him, he said Museveni has always claimed he's a Munyankole, we Banyankole, we have a saying in Kinyankole, Banyankole, this is this. He has never said Banyakegezi.
Okay, our viewers, now,
so Prof, that is what I want to tell you that story.
Yeah.
So finally,
yes, about the
I was supposed to comment on Shankwanzi.
And
has become the initial purpose of disabling people to go to Shankwanzi was good, and it would continue being good if all political parties
and
were invited.
In parliament.
Yes. But because the NRM under their leadership claims that these are their enemies, that members and leaders of the opposition are enemies of the country. So you don't.
They make it an NRM.
You don't teach enemies to ever take over your country. You don't teach hated enemies to be trained to govern. Why? So it is a mistake, and it is a sectarian organization, so in rather center.
In your view, Shankwanzi is irrelevant, in your view, apparently?
It is not relevant to Uganda, because the whole purpose of Shankwanzi is to teach people to become good NRM supporters
than good leaders
of Uganda. And why I am campaigning that this should be Museveni's last term, and I asked him that if he really loves Uganda, he has never denied that he loves Uganda, then he must now allow us to discuss what is going to be leadership. And I will be campaigning as an elder Ugandan that Shankwanzi either be expanded to be inclusive of members of parliament, not NRM cadres. That is the first reform we should have. Just as they used to call us to address new members of parliament, I address new members of parliament every 5 years for about 15 years. And whenever we called visitors from abroad, like the former Speaker of Kenya, Kaparo, and others, they addressed the whole parliament, not one sectarian. So, my criticism of the Shankwanzi and what they do there is that it is not only sectarian, but because NRM has got more MPs in parliament than the others, that's where they make the important decisions which affect every Ugandan in this country. Recently you heard they were discussing amendment of the constitution. They were deciding, presumably, the speaker and the so. These are national issues, not partisan. And my view is, in my book, In the Name of God, Truth and Justice, there is a chapter which says one of the major problems in Uganda is the political parties. They are equally selfish. The only party that has ever invited me to address them as a party. There are two. The DP, when Semogere was still its leader, and Betty Kanya, when she was leading the so-called Federal Party, which I warned against others. Federal is the system. You should be campaigning with NRM, DP, FDC to have the country federal. It can't be a party. And I was right. She used to criticize me. I hope she's listening to this program. Kamya Betty. She used to criticize me, saying that I am the one who gave Museveni power, a lot of power, as if I was the only one who made the constitution. But when I explained to her why we gave her those power, gave him the power, see, he has got the power to appoint judges. He has got power to appoint ministers. That's why he's the dictator. Those are the words of Bete Kamya. Bete Kamya, who is a minister now. Then I said, in every country, somebody must appoint judges. Somebody must appoint ministers. We put in the constitution
for parliament approval
that judges, candidates will be nominated by the Judicial Service Commission, which is supposed to be independent. Secondly, ministers must be approved by parliament, not by one party. People who are myopic, who don't want to listen to reason, you would think that she was taught a lesson. She didn't. Then finally, on Bete Kamya, and she's a typical of Uganda politician. When Museveni said, my daughter or my sister, I make you a minister, the next statement she said, Museveni should live forever.
He's a good said.
That's ridiculous. So that's why I write in my book, in the name of God, truth and justice,
The opposition is equally
that the politicians, political parties have not done any good thing for Uganda. At least the movement has got some claim of success.
Okay, our viewers, we're still with Professor Dr. George Wilson Kanyeihamba, and we are on our show, The Mighty Drive. I want to take you back to what you have just discussed and informed our viewers about. You said the Banyachigezi consists of Batwa, Banyarwanda, Bachiga,
and the
Bahororo. Now, you were a draftsman at a time. To so many people who believe otherwise, think that should we even call it a tribe? Because the other side, it's a whole country with Banyarwanda, the Rwandese.
That's what?
The Banyarwanda. To some people, they say that tribe here was smuggled into our constitution. That's why amongst the tribes we have in the country, we have Banyarwanda. First of all, in your view, was it right to have another tribe put it into our possession? Because apparently, if I am sure, as day follows night, that you have been following the sequence of events where the likes of Frank Gashumba and others want to form, they want their name to be changed, the tribe, from the Banyarwanda to Bavandimwe. Bavandimwe Ravazi, Bantu Avamundimwe, people who come from one womb. Yes. So he wants those people to be named, the tribe to be named Bavandimwe than Banyarwanda, because once you go to immigration office and you fill the forms in application of a passport and say you are a Munyarwanda, they have questions and so much concerns. Was it right for you people to bring that tribe and name them the Banyarwanda, and they have their country, and then you make them citizens here?
It was very much right for two reasons. One, I am a Mchiga. I am proud to say that I am proud of my origins. I'm not ashamed of Mchiga. The Banyarwanda of Uganda who originate not from Rwanda,
alone, yeah.
but from Bufumbira.
Even
The county where the Banyarwanda dominate is Bufumbira and Kigezi. The Bahororo dominate Chinchizi, rather Rujumbura. The Bachiga, Chinchizi, Kabale, Rwanda, they are in the majority in Kigezi, but we came from there. Secondly, most of us, including Museveni, our roots are in Rwanda.
Prof, don't tell me we are
If
also
you
the
read
ones.
my book, The Blessings and the Joy of Who You Are, I trace my roots into Muganza, Rwanda. I am proud that our people came from there. I cannot cancel history. So having said that, when the NRM came in first, they wanted to abolish tribalism. That is why districts are named after towns rather than
Tribes specifically.
tribes of districts. You have district of Kanungu instead of Chinchizi. The district of Kabale instead of Ruchiga. The district of Rwanda instead of being part of Ruchiga. It is Kisoro, not of Fumbira. The idea of the movement at that time was to minimize any reference
In a tribal.
tribal. If you look at the ministers and the leaders we have today, many of their origins is Rwanda. Chigongo. Chigongo is
Originally.
a name from Kigezi. Champade is the Champeire, which when they came to Uganda, they changed it to Champade. Ruhakana Rugunda, Mbabazi. Their roots are in Rwanda.
And you? You say.
And you people, I hope the Baganda will not be annoyed. Look at the picture of Mutesa II. For me, I do history. Let them tell you where his roots come from. They are not originally from Uganda. So that is number one. So we should be proud of our history.
So in your view, it was ethical and right enough to have another, to have that tribe, which to so many belonged and belongs to another country, into being one of our indigenous.
I am telling you, because you asked a question, I haven't answered it yet.
Yes.
Why not? How did the Banyarwanda come to be in the constitution?
Yes.
So there was a raging debate in the CA. The Banyarwanda, who are Tutsis, Hamite, who are traditionally cattle keepers, fought very hard to have Rwanda put in the constitution, because they don't want to be confused with the Bahutu, the cattle, rather the cultivators, who historically were really served the Batusi. So the campaign to put Banyarwanda in the constitution was led by none other than my former Solicitor General, by the name of Kabasi, Peter Kabasi, whose wife actually is a minister now and a member of parliament. And she's not from Rwanda, but I think she's from Ankole.
Zimbabwe, Kabasi?
Kabasi. Then the debate for Banyarwanda, and members of that committee included people like the late Justice Mulenga, people like the former Inspector General of Police, Kaihura. See, I know this because I was there and I participated. Then the Banyarwanda of Fumbira, who were not Batusi, insisted that they should not longer be, they don't want to be called Banyarwanda. And I will tell you the reason why, and they were right. They want to be called Bafumbira.
At the time, that's what they were suggesting.
Yeah, this is when we were debating the constitution.
Yes.
They were suggesting they should call them man. And the reason was, whenever people who were from Banyarwanda, called Banyarwanda, went to apply for passport or for jobs, they said, are you a Banyarwanda from Rwanda or from Uganda?
But you did not specify that in our constitution, Prof, as a draftsman.
Pardon?
As a draftsman and others, you did not specify, because that's why the likes of Gashumba and others have found it relevant to change the name. Because now, had you made it so clear, Banyarwanda of Uganda, as you're saying, that's what they wanted to, to avoid, I think we wouldn't be having trouble now.
But I see, Norman, you are forgetting it that I was one of 300 delegates. I have been criticized.
You carried the whole
at that time. We were supposed to make the constitution in 6 months. It took us 1.5 hours. Yeah.
No, yes.
Then I was questioned as chairman of the legal and drafting committee and a very influential member. That, why are you taking so long? I said many of these issues we are trying to put in the constitution are controversial.
That be managed hurriedly.
Secondly, people are very emotional about them. Now, Bufumbira was represented by both Tutsi ethnic group
Hutu, Batwa,
and Batwa. Secondly, Rukunjiri had the same kind of people, Bahima and the Bairu. You can even see in Buganda, you have Bakochi and other people. So there was a consensus in Parliament that we must name our original tribes. So when we named those that were composing the district against that independent, we got campaigns where you have left our tribe there. You have our tribe. If you read the schedule, those tribes, Kanyeihamba didn't know them.
Even have the Samia.
Many of them, even today, when they mention them, I don't know them.
Have the Samia of.
But we had to accommodate everybody. We never left out anybody, even the pygmies, who are very few and almost non-influential in national affairs, are also there. Because somebody said, you have forgotten the Batwa, who are pygmies. So, let us know, we must stop blaming individuals.
They proposed the being Bafumbira. What happened? What happened to their name? And we see it becoming Banyarwanda. You said,
so we have Bafumbira and Banyarwanda. And when you see somebody still calling themselves Banyarwanda, that is a Mtusi. When you see somebody calling themselves Bafumbira, is also Mnyarwanda, but a Mhutu. Because as I have told you, and it was very logical,
Yeah.
You are a Ugandan. Then you come and say, I am Banyarwanda. Everybody knows Banyarwanda live in Rwanda.
Yeah.
So naturally,
was a contradiction
officials
word.
asked, are you a Banyarwanda Uganda or Rwanda? And you have to say, I am from Uganda. They may even have said, we don't believe you. Try to investigate. But if you say you are a Mufumbira,
yeah, it becomes easier for you to acquire any passport. Now,
so that's why it was put there.
There is another theory that perhaps you people at a time, that this could have been a payback token to the likes of the Rwandese fighters, the likes of Bayingana, Rwigema, Bunyanyezi, and of course Kagame and others, that because they had contributed towards the NRA struggle, they wanted to also be dual citizens in one way or the other, so that people assume that it was a payback token to them. Could that be true?
No, that is not true at all. There is no iota of truth in that allegation. Because, as I have told you, the reason the Kayuras, the Mulengas, wanted to be called Banyarwanda is because they were Batutsi. And that historically and ethnically, they felt they were much closer, they were of the same tribe as Banyarwanda. On the other hand, the Bahutu, which included people like the principal judge, Great Tabova, another judge, Peter Hu, and those were the Bahutu, and they didn't have any other notion other than we are tired of being called Banyarwanda when we were Ugandans. They felt very strongly about that, but nothing to do with rewarding anybody, because in the fight, in the Liberation War, which Museveni led, it's true there were many Banyarwanda. It's true that many of them were Tutsis, because he's Mhoro originally also a Tutsi. But they were also ordinary people. The Ntabgobas were in exile. We had called him there to become judge here. Others had suffered. So we were not fighting Rwanda's war.
Neither were you
their
paying
civil
back.
war. We were fighting to liberate Uganda, where both Batuso Bufumbira and the Bahutu Bufumbira were part of us, and they are part of us, of Uganda.
Okay, the Rwanda, Banyarwanda, Bavandimwe, Banyachigezi, it's a long story. I want on record to ask an appointment this time around, and on record that we, by God's grace, we invite Frank Gashumba. Yes. And I sit amidst you two, Gashumba on my left and you.
Yeah, I want to be there.
And you discuss the Banyachigezi, Bavandimwe things with time. Gashumba, people
and invite, I want you to invite
yeah.
Justice Tabaru. He's retired now. Invite him, Justice Tabaru, because he will speak on behalf of the Bahutu.
Okay.
There is a terrible hatred
and it's increasing
between the two, because in Rwanda, you know, there was genocide.
Yeah.
And about 1 million Tutsis were butchered to death. So their ethnic relations in Bufumbira, they feel very strongly. If you ask Tabaru, he's retired, he's still alive.
Yeah.
Ask him what happened and why do you call yourself Bafumbira instead of Banyarwanda. He will tell you. The hegemony of Rwandese is based on serf and boss. They will tell you that during the colonial times and before that, they were only serfs. they could never be chiefs. So they hated that. That's why they were very passionate that we want to be called Bafumbira. Ask Justice Tabaro, the late Justice Ndagova, who was our first NRM principal judge. He's dead now. Ask his people, and his wife is still there. So that division originally came from Rwanda, where the Hutus were serfs and the Tutsi the bosses.
Before we go into a break, Prof, I want to ask, as a constitutional expert, how possible is it for the likes of Gashumbas and others to change the name from Banyarwanda to Bavandimwe, in your view? Constitutionally, how possible is that?
Then, I don't think Bavandimwe is in the constitution, is it?
It's not. Yeah, that's why they are agitating that because of the persecutions and others.
From what you say, Gashumba sounds like a Mtusi, doesn't he?
Definitely.
I don't know him.
No, he is. Yeah.
But is he? Isn't he?
Yeah, he is.
So obviously,
A Mtusi of Masaka.
for the reason I have given to you, it is quite obvious. It is quite obvious that Abatusi, going by Musumba Kazumba, don't want to be called
Banyarwanda.
No, to be called Bafumbira. Because Bafumbira, I told you,
it was too much of
Hutus. And he doesn't want to be known as a Hutu.
And finally, on that very topic, and then we shall go to
Actually, I am glad you asked that question. It clarifies everything.
It's causing not trouble per se, but it's causing a debate now. It's enough.
So they wanted to introduce another person,
Bavandimwe, like they
which
come from
I
one
hope we shall not allow, because it will be based on sectarianism.
I get.
Because they are Bahutu, Nankani, Batusi, who live in Bufumbira, should be happy to be called Bafumbira, because that is physically from mountains of Mahavura and where Kisoro is. So if you ask me if I was still a member of parliament,
Most likely they'll ask your
or
opinion
a member of the Constituent Assembly, I would be among those who would be bitterly opposing to the likes of Kasumba and say, you are a Mfumbira. You are not a Mnyarwanda. You are not a Mfumbira. Our constitution says you are a Mfumbira. You are one.
Okay. On that topic, as we close our first hour, where has it worked in other countries that you find an American constitution, for instance, having Ugandans as a tribe? Is there any country which has such a constitution? Because we have Banyarwanda, who presumably, and it is factual, they're supposed to be Rwandese. I mean, they have their own country.
But I said, you see, I have written in my book, which you haven't had the chance to read, called The Constitutional History of Uganda from 1894 to the present. And in that one, first chapter, I describe the history of Uganda, the origin of the name of Buganda, why we have Uganda and Buganda. Just to tell you quickly,
how
the Swahili who were accompanying the Europeans who came to the interior could not pronounce Bu, Buganda, Busoga, so they called it
Uganda.
So when the Europeans came here, if it hadn't been this external factor, Uganda would be Buganda. So when the colonial discovered that the other areas were Uganda, rather Uganda, Busoga, Ugisu, they said, let's keep the whole country. This region we have founded, Bunyorozi, Banyakigezi, let us call it Uganda with the U, but it is Uganda. And the rest of the country, which we have incorporated in the order in the Council of 1894. That's why I said my constitution is from 1894, because that's when Uganda became a country. Let's call the rest their local names, and the local names was not invented. Ruchiga has always been Ruchiga. The Bachiga who inherited called the land of Ruchiga. Ankole, it has always been Ankole. Now, let me tell you what happened in the Constituent Assembly. We put the clause that people from the same district or from the same ethnic group can deem themselves. So you have Masaka or whatever of Buganda. You had the districts of Ankole, they are deemed of Ankole region, Batoro region, Acholi region. To reflect our historical
So they had to
origin,
regionalize
we are proud of. Now, when it came to deeming the districts of Kigezi, there are now many, but at that time there were only 3. There was Ndorwa, rather Kabale, Rukunjiri, and Chisoro. So we wanted to deem them. And there was agreement among all the Kigezi representatives. Rukunjiri had no problem. Representative, there were people like Mwezi, Kabale, I was there, Kanarugunda, Mbaba. We had no problem deeming us the district of Kigezi. The representative, one of them, I don't want to mention their name, refused. He said the Bachiga have always dominated the Banyarwanda. And we don't want to deem ourselves with them as of Kigezi. Because under the district of Kigezi, dominated by the Bachiga, we suffered. So we don't want to remind ourselves of our bosses. Only one delegate refused. The chairman and the House had agreed that should any one representative refuse to be deemed, we shall remain as we are. So later, when they made an amendment to the Constitution, Banyakigezi, that representative was no longer in Parliament. And so they deemed themselves. So this is now Kisoro, Kabale, and Rukunjiri. There are others, Chinchisi,
Kanungu, and
Kigezi.
Yeah. Okay, our viewers, we're still with Professor Dr. Retired Justice George Wilson Kanyeihamba. I want to go into a short break of strictly 2 minutes or thereabout, but to say as we return, our studio line is 0789017145. Studio line is 0789017145. He's here, very sober as always. And by the way, Gashumba, where are you? Let's come back.
Yeah, please. I would like to have a word with Gashumba.
Okay. You have heard Gashumba. Where are you? Prof wants to have a word with you about your Bavandimwe Banyarwanda issues.
Yes, yes.
Let's come back shortly.
The world is at a critical moment of providing innovative alternatives as a means to create change.
As such, we have created a not-for-profit alternative mobile digital platform as a way to promote space for freedom of speech and expression to the unheard voices.
We know you believe in the cause and you can further it more by contributing to its sustainability in forms of internet data, fuel, and any other support you deem relevant.
Please support us with your contribution to Equity Bank account number 103-5201-607252 under the name Alternative Digital, or our mobile money numbers 0702-900076 or 0783-047785. Alternative Digital. Real issues, real talk.
Hey Ugandans, I'm Lieutenant Colonel Dewa Kiki, the Deputy Defense Spokesperson and actually the Deputy Spokesperson for the Uganda People's Defense Forces. I was hosted on Alternative Digital. I encourage all Ugandans that this is the way to go. Always watch, participate, give your views and ask questions on Alternative Digital. Digital, the way to go.
Thanks all our viewers for your consistency and patience to follow our discussions. It is a Wednesday, 5th, and we are at Professor Dr. Retired Justice of Supreme Court George Wilson Kanyeihamba sharing with us. The Bavandimwe thing is becoming too long. When we are in a break, one of us, one Arnold, said why it is raising concerns. It's because the Samia of Eastern Uganda, as it is simply a tribe which it duos, it's in Uganda and Kenya. Whereas Banyarwanda is, I mean, it's a whole country, Rwanda, yes. And so it is causing, that's why there is a hot debate.
You are right, yes.
I think my prayer, just like so many viewers here are asking, we shall kindly ask that we meet you and Frank Gashumba and also
I will be very happy.
Retired Justice Tabaro to discuss this, because our children and grandchildren wouldn't want them to grow up into, I mean, through those divisions.
They should know their history.
Tribal divisions when we are all of us Africans. Let's leave that for now. Let's go back to now another topic or discussion, Prof. One will ask about what is happening in the country and most importantly the presidential electoral petitions. And we wanted to sacrifice and offer this last hour toward that topic. Perhaps you educate young lawyers, guide justices and others on how to manage, in fact, how to petition and manage an electoral petition, especially a presidential one, because the other time we had with Professor Lumumba, it remains a concern amongst so many senior advocates of constitutionalism like you, on how Supreme Courts in Africa have rather taken it to be a ruling than an inquiry. Let's proceed from there, sir.
Now, that's a very, very pertinent question, and I'm glad you asked it. Since you helped to launch my other book, Constitutional Law, Public Law and the Government, there have been so many telephone calls to me from even NRM that you have stated that the judges have never implemented the Constitution properly. That's why presidential elections continue to be decided the way they are decided. This is a very, very, very important question. So as a result, since we launched that book, I have finished another one. By the way, I will not mention them. They are lawyers whether they're hunting a fortune or not. Recently, I heard, I never even received their letters, that there are lawyers who have instructed other lawyers to say that they wrote that book with me. It is absolutely rubbish. Because the only people have consulted on that book, and I acknowledge them.
The one we recently launched?
Hmm?
You mean the one we
Yeah, but the most important appears in the book, Justice Engonda Ntende. He even read the original manuscript and commented on it. Then when it finished, I asked him to write a foreword to that book. And when he commented on it, he said he's very glad I have come up with the second edition of my first book. And my first book is called Constitutional and the Government, and it was published in 1975, before these people who are claiming that they wrote with me were born. So you ask, how old are you? I think they were born after 1975. They say, how did you contribute to the writing of Kanyehamba's book when you are still in your mother's womb? Anyway, to go forward,
the petition.
I have been very concerned that Ugandans, we don't have a reading culture, number one. That even if we understand a law, other reasons blind us to implement that law. We avoid it. Just as I told you that the President Museveni is a munyakigezi. But when a senior official of the movement visited me and I showed him the book, which talks about the Museveni family as the most prominent munyakigezi, he didn't want to know. He said, please, he kept his eyes closed. I don't want to know. Because he would admit that he knows the truth. And he's more comfortable remaining in ignorance about Museveni. Kahindo Tafiri. Also, they are claiming for him that he's a Munyankole. But the Kahindo Tafiri is my close relative. We were both born in Chinaba, which is part of Chinchizi, and we are both of the Bagavita clan. He and I share one great grandfather. But ask all Banyankole, they say he's one of us. He's a Munyankole. And when you tell him that,
we'll ask Mushega to tell us.
They are blind. So let me tell you.
Petition.
I want everybody, they don't have to send any money, whether they are lawyers or not. If they believe in truth, let everybody get Article 104 of the Uganda Constitution. Article 104. I emphasize. Get that one, and then get an act which was passed after Parliament had been bribed. The act is called Presidential Elections. Presidential Elections Act. Article 104, when you read it, it has six clauses. Article 104. said, if there is a presidential petition, the Supreme Court shall inquire into it. Not here. Inquire into the petition. And then give not judgment, but give findings. I think the viewers know what those words mean. Inquire into and give findings. These are clear and unambiguous words. Everybody in Uganda who can speak English knows when you inquire, you are the one taking initiative. You are not guided by anybody. You don't listen to the evidence of one witness. As the commission inquiring, you decide which evidence you want to use. And you can reject the evidence given by
either the petitioner,
the witness, or the petitioner, or the respondent. That is an inquiry. I give an example. The second petition under the 1995 Constitution was held in 2006. I was part of that panel. The others were the Chief Justice, Ben Odochi. The others, Justice Mulenga. I'll come to that one. Very, very important. It's in my book. Justice Odeo, Justice Sekoko, Justice Katurebe, who later became Chief Justice. And who was the other one? No, we were 5. We were 7. Odochi, Odeo, Sekoko, Karokola, Kanyeihamba, and Katurebe. Katurebe was he just retired as Chief Justice. He was an excellent judge, very brainy. He's one of my students, first students at Makerere, and he says so. So I want you to know that quote. Odochi had been chairman of the Constitutional Commission that had traveled the lengths and the breadths of Uganda to gather the views of how Ugandans wanted to be governed, came up with a report. That report, the Odochi report, was the working document of the Constituent Assembly. He later became Chief Justice. The other was Justice Odeo. Justice Odeo was a very seasoned judge, and we had studied together in the UK during the 60s, and he was brilliant. And when I became Attorney General under Rule, the short-lived government of Rule, I looked for him. He was in exile in Zambia. I told the Judicial Service Commission, of which that time the Chief Justice was chairman, Samuel Wambusi, that we should recruit him because he's got one of the fastest brains in the country. And that's why we got him, and he became a judge of the High Court. Before he went through the system, so he was also on the panel. It's very, very important that I describe the people who were in that court. Then there was also Justice Sekoko. Sekoko had been a very, very respected, well-known judge. He's the best judge I ever known about the rules and interpretation. He was an expert. Even in our court, when we were on one panel, we were 7, we used to consult him. We judges, because of his photographic memory of rules and the procedures. Just so there, while I was still Minister of Justice, he was appointed to investigate the plight of people during the Obote regime, and he came up with a commission's report, which is one of the best in the world, and it is cited everywhere. I remember John Nagenda was a member of that constitution. So when I became Attorney General, Nagenda and others petitioned that because Justice Odero came from Lango, I should replace him as chairman of judicial of the other party, because many of the crimes were made by Obote. I refused. I said I know his brain. Yes, I studied with him. He's one of the best judges we ever had.
Odero.
And yes, and if there is any Ugandan who doubts my judgment of Odero, let them read the commission report which he chaired. It is a classic about human rights in Uganda. He was on that panel. Katurebe had been one of my first students at Makerere. He was a brilliant student. And when he was appointed Chief Justice, I had stopped being Minister of Justice. I congratulated him. I was so delighted. But as I will show, he changed.
From the former brilliant student.
Yes, to a cadre, a pure cadre.
From a pure student to a pure cadre.
To a pure cadre. Now, that was the team of 7 judges. Justice Odochi, Justice Asa Odero, Justice Sekoko. Karokola is one I haven't talked about. Karokola rose from the ranks. He was originally a magistrate. But he was so good, he went through being promoted to chief magistrate, from chief magistrate to a judge of the High Court, from judge of the High Court to the Court of Appeal, and eventually to the Supreme Court. He was a grounded man in the law with a wealth of experience.
Yeah.
Then, ever since I finished, started the university and finished in '64, I have been teaching constitutional law. Ever since, professor of constitutional law at about 3 universities in the UK. Last year with Cardiff, where I was senior lecturer. When I went to Cardiff, there were about 4 professors in law. But at the head of the department, knowing my record, made me in charge of constitutional law. Then when I came, and I had become a politician, people knew me. President Museveni knew me. During the Bush, I supported the NRM struggle, NRM as it was called. And Museveni will deny it, presumably. But you ask him. I used to write to him in the bush. we were fighting. I was then a lecturer at two universities. One, University of Coventry. Then later, I was made senior lecturer and I went to the University of Wales at Cardiff. But I was a very strong movementist. And he used to read my letters in the bush. If he denies, you ask General Charlie Gonza, because he's the one who told me that you helped us in the bush. And whenever we are stuck, President Museveni would call all the high command and he said, we got advice from our professor again, Kanyeihamba, in London. He said we should do this, we should do this. The foundation of the LOCs and bringing politics to the village was based on the paper I wrote to the external committee of the NRA. The first ever origin of the movement, we met in Lusaka. I was still a lecturer in the UK. The late Chivenjeri, who was not a politician but very concerned about human rights. Yeah.
Is it Hope Chivenjeri?
Hope is his daughter.
Oh.
Was called Festo.
Festo.
Chivenjeri. He's the one who recruited me in politics. He knew my record, and one day he was at a wedding in London. He called me to go and see him. And he said, I want you to do something for your country. I said what it is. Then he told me he had a Christian organization which had the money. He said, we are paying your ticket. You go to Zambia and you meet other Ugandans there. We want you people to help liberate our country from Idi Amin. That was Festo Chivenjeri, very well known international evangelist. So one day, the High Commission in London called me. There is a return ticket for you here to Lusaka. I had never been to Lusaka. So I flew alone. I met there a younger man who had also been invited, Yoweri Museveni. Eliya Kategaya was in Exile teaching at the Zambia University. There was a father, of course, Catholic father. I don't know whether he's still alive or died. There was a heavyweight of the UPC, the late Tiberondwa. There was a doctor. He's still alive. Martin Adike. And the two others, I can't remember. And we all met in Lusaka. Together with the late ambassador, Prince of Ankole, what was his name? He was the
former UPC Secretary General. Huh? You mean the one who was the Secretary General for UPC? You mean Ibinjira?
No. Ibinjira was not there. He was at one time our High Commission in London, but he was the king's son. He was regarded as a king. But we shall find him now. So he came there. Then we started what was called the National Liberation Front. I wrote the constitution of the Liberation Front. We elected Bariji. That was his name, Prince Bariji. Okay. We elected Prince Bariji as our chairman. It was supposed to be highly confidential. We already knew we were going to campaign clandestinely against Idi Amin and do everything.
Was this different from the UNLF?
Pardon? No, that's before UNLF.
So UNLF was from this. I mean, the idea most likely came from this because
that's where it came.
The difference is just one letter. Uganda Liberation.
That was it. But it was called Uganda Liberation Front.
At first it was National Liberation
Front. So I'll tell you what happened. Because of the politics of Ankole, and Museveni was, I think, was on the committee. Barije, a prince of Ankole, on the committee. Tiberondwa was Emiru, not a Muhima. Very fanatical anti-Bahima. So he was very disappointed that we had elected a Muhima.
Prince for that matter.
And the prince on a committee to liberate Uganda. So
the tribal wars have aren't new. They have been there.
For a long time. Even today they are there in Ankole. They don't say so. Many Banyankole don't like Museveni because he's regarded as a Muhima. But I've told you,
he's a Meshigis.
He's not. Bahima came originally from Ethiopia. For him, his origin is from elsewhere. Okay. So many of the Bahima also don't really believe in him.
The typical
but the Banyankole think he's one of the Banyankole. Uganda politics, especially in the Western region, is very confused. You need to study them to understand. So what happened? Tiberondwa published us.
Adonia.
Ugandans have formed Adonia, have formed a group to fight against Amin. Then, when he exposes us, Prince Barije did not lead us properly. We were short-lived. That is the origin.
Of UNLF.
Yes. That is the origin of the movement. Now, my problem with President Museveni, he hates politics which tends to please others and rather to praise others. Look in his books.
Has never mentioned.
Kanyeihamba is not mentioned in that book. Despite what I did for the movement. Because let me tell you, I am the one who wrote the constitution of that group in Zambia, which was short-lived. Then we survived. By that time, Museveni was in Zambia fighting militarily.
Mozambique.
Yes. Then we followed the meeting with the Chibenje still helping us. I went to Nairobi. There was a Mchiga, a rich man, called Stephen Tindiebwa. He was very rich, he had houses there. He joined to fight. So, from some exiles from America, some in London, he paid some of those. For me, I was paid by Festo Chivenjeri Bishop, and we met in Nairobi. One of the representatives I met there, after that second meeting, which built up the movement, was Kayondo from Uganda. He's still alive. He recently came to the launch of the book. The other one, in that meeting was Amanya Mshega. Wakana Rugunda came. Kaida. Andrew Kaida came to that meeting. Kabgejiri was not a member of any of this, but he was teaching at Nairobi University in exile. Then the Obote group opposed the formation of a national group because for them, the UPC and the Obote people were fighting for him to go back as a president. And Nyerere had the promise that is going to do every effort to make sure that his friend Obote returns to Uganda as president. So what happened? The forces of UPC, remember some of them were in exile in Nairobi, told a lie that those of us who were meeting in Mr. Kayondo's office. He had an office there, he was also in exile. They had the reason to believe we were all going to be arrested and handed over to Uganda because we were trying to disturb a friendly neighboring country. So we scattered. We immediately ran away. Then within a day, somebody told us, he said, there is a Ugandan who is in exile teaching at Nairobi University by the name of Utasis Kabwejere. If we meet in his house on the campus, nobody will suspect that we are there. So we can continue with our meeting. So another one who attended, who was in exile in Nairobi, was Professor Tandon. Tandon, a Ugandan, I think he was from Teso. His father had a shop there. He was of Indian origin, but a fanatic Ugandan patriot. He also attended. The other one who attended was Omonyo Jok, the late Omonyo Jok, who also was in exile in Tanzania. So many, we have a list. So we met in Kabwejere's house. Later on, he was to, you see, Ugandan is really, we are not very good with history. Later on, he was to write to say he's one who founded the UNLF. But nobody knew him at that time. We only used him because he was a Ugandan in exile and he was willing to support us. But because we had a meeting in his house, we set up what is known as a consultative committee of the new group. And it consisted of Kabwejere. We asked him to chair it because we were grateful that he allowed us to have a meeting in his house. For no other reason. Because if you read my other books, when Museveni wanted to lead UPM, Kabwejere very, very seriously wanted to be the chairman. I was in London, and he called me, we talked for an hour, trying to convince me that I should support him to be the chairman, and not Museveni of UPM. And when he finished, I realized this man is not a politician, because he never even asked me to join the group they were founding. He only wanted me to use me to support him against Museveni, which I didn't. I refused. So let me cut this one short. We set up the consultative committee. Kaira, Kanyeihamba, Yash Tandon, Omonyo Jok, Magezi, and two others, Dr. Sinabudia. He was a doctor of medicine, but we put him on the committee. And the idea had been brought to us by none other than the late Rule, Professor Rule Yusuf. He was a friend of Nyerere, and they said, if Ugandans can get together, we want to fight Amin. That is Nyerere. But we need somebody, a leader, to lead a new group, which we shall be reasoning with and collaborating, because we can't declare war on Uganda as a Tanzanian government, the world will criticize us. It's against the UN Charter. But if we can have a Uganda leadership, we can use that. They had contacted me and I contacted Kaira, the Tanzanian state ambassador in London. Had invited us. I was teaching at Cardiff. He called Kaira. We met in London, in a hotel, not in Tanzania embassy. They told us the program. So they said, you too, we have called you. We are in touch with Chivenjeri. You coordinate, have a meeting somewhere in East Africa. And then when you have formed a Uganda, the Liberation Front, Tanzania will fall behind it 100%. We shall do the fighting, not you. So we are really very excited, and that's what exactly we did. So that committee, chaired by Kabwejiri, which we set up in his house in Nairobi, with the members I have told you, we decided that we can't call every refugee to come and attend that meeting. Secondly, if we do, the majority of exiles in East Africa, Dar es Salaam, Zambia, Nairobi, were UPC ministers and the politicians. They would dominate. None of us wanted Obote to come back as president. We were all very hostile because we thought we had messed up Uganda. So we said, but we recognize UPC as a fighting group. Yes, that's right. DP, the others. So let each group be represented by 2 delegates only, with 2 observers. These are the only ones we shall allow to attend the venue identified and protected by Tanzania, which turns out to be Moshi. So we set the date.
Of the Mosh conference then? Of the Mosh conference?
Of the Mosh conference. Then the Tanzania.
Let's come back briefly in a second, and we will indeed finish this. Just in a second.
Betty.
Hey Ugandans, I'm Lieutenant Colonel Dewa Kiki, the Deputy Defense Spokesperson and actually the Deputy Spokesperson for the Uganda People's Defense Forces. I was hosted on Alternative Digitalk. I encourage all Ugandans that this is the way to go. Always watch, participate, give your views and ask questions on Alternative Digitalk. Digitalk, the way to go.
Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
We are back. The viewers of the Match Drive, still with Professor, retired Justice of Supreme Court, George Wilson Kanyeihamba. Yes, we are having. We wanted
I
to
want
make
to
it.
finish
Yeah.
a note
Yeah.
quickly because
Yes.
I know we were on a different subject. The subject is
The
petition,
petition. Yeah.
but I was diverted. But I think you edit it accordingly. So to cut this story short, we go to Moshi. The most influential and directing force was Professor Kaira and my contribution. Others were, apart from those who were in Tanzania, including Museveni, who had talked to Nyerere for a long time, were not known. So we finished at Moshi. When we finished, I was elected by the delegates to draft the UNRF constitution. So that's what I did. I had drafted the constitution of Uganda Liberation Front at Moshi. There is not a single document which Uganda is governed for, other than the constitution, the pigeonhole constitution and that of Uganda 1967, where I never proved. And that's why I have told you, Museveni respected me very much in those days, relied on me, and he was citing me in the bush, which you can ask people where high command is. It's true. Ask Chad Gonza. Because I didn't know what was happening in the bush, but they told me. And then they would decide, yeah, let's follow the professor's plan. It's okay. So back to the.
That's one of those situations.
That's right. So going back to where had we reached with the petition?
To borrow from the same brains of constitutional expertise to the presidential electoral petition.
Yeah, absolutely. So back to the presidential petition.
Managed and misunderstood.
We have had 7 petitions, 6 on presidential elections being challenged. The person declared the winner all the time has been President Museveni. But each time, the court has been divided. So you ask yourself as a lay person, if the facts are the same, the judges I have mentioned are all experienced and learned. They are applying the same law to the same facts and the same circumstances. How come they come up with the different decisions? It doesn't sound logical. So that is what I am here. Please, you people listen, to prove. Article 104, it's very important. I urge every Ugandan, if you can, and every judge especially, and the law office, and law officer, to get hold of Article 104. It has never been amended since we adopted the 1995 Constitution. It has remained the same, except by the NRM party, and it didn't amend the Constitution because it knew intelligent people like Kanyeihamba and you, Norman, would see through the lie. So they enacted, first of all, they bribed the parliament to enact the amendment to the constitution of 2005. Having paid willing MPs, the majority NRM, 5 million shillings per MP. So I wanted you to know that the amendment in 2005, and there's another small amendment which is the problem of presidential elections, enacted also in 2005 and inserted, smuggled in what they call Presidential Elections Act of the same year, 2005, were unconstitutional and illegal and obtained through parliament by bribery. When the likes of Elia Kategaya, who was the first man of Museveni and his friend, confidant, and as I have told you, they originated the NRA and the NRM from Lusaka. I was present. Justice, rather, Dr. Alike was there, and it is still the same one that we are here. But the movement fanatics would like the name Kanyeihamba not to appear anywhere in the movement. So what happened? People like Bavandimwe, Kategaya, Matembe, Amanyamushega opposed this amendment of the constitution. Because even Museveni himself had admitted publicly when we were launching it that it was the best Ugandans had ever made, and he would go in the bush once more if anybody interfered with it. I want you to remember that background. So, when Parliament refused, Museveni has once said, I know how to do with the people who don't support my ideas. So he used corruption. And they paid them 5 million shillings each. He said, please, you have accepted our money. This is what we want you to do. They amended the constitution, 2005, to remove term limits, which is the current Chief Justice today, Doro Owinyi Alphonse, has said publicly, we made a mistake in making that amendment. He's our current Chief Justice, recommended by the Judicial Service Commission and properly appointed by our current leader, President Museveni. He has said, Ugandans made a mistake in removing term limits. I want Ugandans to remember that. So, then they looked at the constitution. These people who were deceiving Ugandans, the NRM, they discovered the courts were independent, because when you read those articles in the constitution, there is no provision to say that the court must decide
Based on the evidence of the petitioner or
the petitioner
the
or here, because it says inquire, it should also give judgment findings, but more importantly, that it should declare whether offenses were committed, electoral offenses, and whether the election was free or fair. I want you to remember that. That was fine. And if petitions were decided in accordance with what the people wanted, and with the constitution, we would have no problem. And at least in 4 of those petitions, I'm not saying the petitioner would have won, but certainly, quite certainly, and in my professional opinion, those presidential elections would have been cancelled. And we have a different one, another one. So what do I mean? Parliament, it is not in the constitution. This power is not in the constitution. Smuggle a clause in article, rather in section 49, I think. 59. Clause 6. A. The constitution didn't have that. Parliament had never approved of that. But the tainted parliament, in my book I call it the Impanned Act, inserted Article 59, Clause 6, Paragraph A. Please, those who have got the constitution or the laws, read that. It's not part of the constitution. It was put in after bribery. And it says, even if you have found that the constitution was violated, that all the electoral rules were infringed, even if you so find, did it make any difference to the result? When I look at this, and I see judges have been duped, did it make any difference to the result? So, read our findings in 2006. We asked questions which all the court should ask. Did the election proceedings in 2006 violate the constitution? Unanimous, we are 7. Unanimous, yes, it did. Did it comply with the electoral law, namely Electoral Commission Act, Presidential Election Act? The answer was unanimous. No, it violated those rules. So that's why we should have ended, because that's what Section 104 says. So we should all have said, therefore, this constitution was not free or fair. It violated the law. It should be nullified. It should have been a unanimous decision. But initially, only 5 of us
out of 7
said, Chiza Besigye has won a petition, we should nullify it. We never said he won the election.
But they were rejected.
Because he never proved to us that he won. Although he brought a scientific, rather an expert on science to show us that if you add X to Y, Z, it equals Besigye, we were not convinced. So, we are supposed to give our decision according to the Constitution The petition shall be filed within 10 days of declaration, and once it is filed, the Supreme Court has gone only 30 days to give its decision, which proves that the Supreme Court itself is to inquire into the petition and not wait for the petitioner or respondents to come with long evidence and you hear cross-examination. All that is nonsensical in presidential petitions. Supreme Court has only got Saturday. And you say, you give them a short time. Why is it a short time? This decision is not being made by Tanzanian judges or foreign judges.
Following the sequence of events.
So all judges were here. When Kyagulanyi was arrested, he was tortured. When the papers said people have disappeared, the government admitting these witnesses disappeared. I was here. Do I need Norman or some lawyer to tell me, bring other witnesses, or you didn't produce a witness? When I saw it myself, as a Ugandan, if you tell me the police tortured candidate Amuriet of FDC, and actually he wanted to be nominated without his shoes, it was shown on TV. Everybody saw, including the international press. Do you need more witnesses? So that's why we discussed this matter. We said, you don't need a long time.
The time is sufficient.
People are waiting to see who's their president. 30 days is more than long. That's why I disagreed with the lawyers of Kyagulanyi. They wanted to put additional evidence. They wanted to put their affidavit. For what? And I agreed with the Chief Justice Judge that what they already had was enough. Because the others, they knew as Ugandans what had happened. Is there any judge in Uganda, whether he was on the panel or not, who doesn't know that Amuriat going to be nominated without shoes? Oh, Katonda wange. The law and the rules are intended to guide us, not to make us slaves. So having said that,
as we close, Prof, in our next 4 minutes.
Yes, sorry.
When
we had the petition,
then we close.
By the way, my book, I want the Ugandan to have it. It's coming.
The title to the
The title is Article 104 of the Uganda Constitution, challenging presidential election. Please, those of you who believe that we should have justice in Uganda, that we should have a government we deserve legally and constitutionally, get a copy. It is now costing on 20,000 shillings. It's nearly 100 pages. But it is readable in English, which everybody can understand. So don't say it is illegal. No. It is intended for everybody. Secondly, friends have helped me to publish it. All determined that we must change our system of deciding. Because finally on this matter, when you read this book, and then you read our findings in 2006, you realize the problem there. How can all the judges unanimously say the election was not free or fair? The constitution was violated. all the laws which they should be applied were infringed. And then, initially, 5 of them say, we allow the petition. But on the same of delivering their findings,
some began to stammer.
The whole thing changes, and only 4 say, rather only 3 of them say we allow the petition, and the 5, rather 4, we dismiss it. Why? Read their reasons for dismissing. They gave only one reason. All of them. In all the petitions, there's only one reason given. And it is based on the unconstitutional provision, paragraph A of Presidential Elections Act of 2005, section 59, clause 6, paragraph A. On one paragraph alone. The condemned paragraph, and every judge will agree with me that I am right to say that that paragraph was smuggled in, having the boat with 5 million shillings. It is unconstitutional. So how come that all the decisions of the Supreme Court, 2001, 2006, 2016, and the 2021, all say are based on paragraph A, clause 6, section 59 of the Constitution of the Supreme Court, rather of the Presidential Elections Act. And the Constitution itself, even as amended subsequently, is silent on that matter. It is not reflected in the Constitution. And yet, all the decisions of the Supreme Court to dismiss Petitioners Act are based on that paragraph A. Only.
Okay, viewers, to remind all of you, Professor Kanyehamba's book, Evolution of Constitutional Law, Public Law and Government, as fresh as it is still in all leading bookshops in this country. And also you can call us or inbox us. Definitely we shall deliver and see how best you can get, in fact, autographed copies. His other coming book,
it will be published this
week,
this Friday.
Okay.
Next Friday.
We shall definitely
this Friday
this
of this week.
We shall definitely update you about the whereabouts of that book as soon as it is out. As we close, one concern, and this is a personal concern.
You have
mentioned.
Can I mention just before you close, please, very quickly? The section 04 says the Supreme Court shall inquire and give its findings. Let us ask all the judges, because my findings are headed in the inquiry. These are my findings. All the other judges avoid those 2 words. Inquiry. They don't use inquire. They don't use judgment, even though those are mandatory words used. Why do they avoid it? Let everybody, including the Chief Justice and whoever, explain to the country. Why don't you use the same words as in the Constitution, which is inquire into and give findings? They are not there.
They do pass into.
And does inquire mean you depend on the evidence by the petitioner or the respondent, or you can use your own evidence? Because I want to finish this one. Give me just 1 minute. This matter was debated. A section like that was brought after the Obote report, rather Odochi's report. We defended in the law council, in the law committee. We were a committee of 15 lawyers, not just one, not Rand Segona or Rand Karwanga, but 15 lawyers. Where people like I have told you, where Professor Nabudiri was a member of my committee. Eric Karwanga was my member of the committee. 15 learned Ugandans. And then you decide the petition from time to time by people who have been, I don't want to go into this area. Many of them had been condemned by various statements. And Museveni appointed them. There is a friend of mine. He doesn't mind me using that one. He was nominated to office, to the Supreme Court, to the Court of Appeal, headship. As a judge. But he has never been recommended, according to the very evidence. Museveni can contradict me, by the president himself. He was not recommended for appointment by the Judicial Service Commission. But Museveni imposed it on the court. I want to finish with this one. Do you remember the former Chief Justice, Odochi? I lead the team which rejected him remaining Chief Justice after the age of 70, because it was unconstitutional. He had accepted to be appointed. There was another judge of the Supreme Court. I don't know whether he was advised over the court. And when he was being recommended, rather when he retired, he said he sworn an affidavit that at his age he was younger than what he was. But that one, I can tell you, evidence came later that the powers that be had nominated him to go to the Supreme Court. Justice Kavuma. Kavuma. I'm glad you mentioned him. Finally, yes, this is my friend. We used to talk together, to eat together with the Minister of Justice, Butera. He agreed to become Deputy Chief Justice, simple on the recommendation of the President. Not the Judicial Service Commission. Yeah. So what I am saying, Kavuma, he was a politician, so I don't blame him for revising his age for the purpose of being appointed. But I blame Butera and Odochi, although they didn't succeed, because they are good judges. Why do you accept a position where you know the president has omitted one step? Then really you must answer to your conscience and God. So I want Butera, if it is true that the Judicial Service Commission didn't nominate him, to reconsider his position. Okay. Thank you.
We can't add even any later on to Prof. Kanyehamba's words. All we can say is that you wait for us tomorrow yet with another guest and our other subsequent shows. And we can pledge on behalf of the Alternative Digital. Time will come, we shall have him here and Gashumba there. And
that Justice Tawaro.
Want to hear that Bavandimwe Banyarwanda discussion is too long. We want to know where does Kanyeihamba belong. Is he Rwandi or a Burundian? But he says he comes from Chigezi. He's a Munyashigezi. Gentlemen and ladies, countrymen, see you tomorrow. tomorrow with another team, another guest. May God bless all of us for God and my country.
Thank you, Norman.